10. This is a long one. Thankfully, it's a lot of pictures. So if you're a visual learner, you're going to enjoy this. I'm going to try to skim through it. I know I can get lengthy. I'm going to try to not do that. But I remember how I talked about when we discussed producers, how the producers that were listed in that chapter were kind of older, like pre 1960s. Luckily, we talk about two producers here who are much more current. Jeffrey Seller, you've probably heard of In the Heights. That's a Lin-Manuel show, as well as the Avenue Q and Rent. Lin-Manuel actually also did Hamilton. So Jeffrey Seller definitely works with him and has had lots of recent success. Cameron Mackintosh did Les Mis, Miss Saigon, Mary Poppins. You've probably heard of some of those. Not quite as current as Seller, but still. These are two producers and lots of money to be had. Just there's a gift for being able to identify what's going to be successful. Some people have it. We go on to talk a little bit here about our department here at Texas A&M Corpus Christi, our faculty and majors, the 4 different kinds of shows that we try to do here. Now, we're in the summer, so we don't have the option for you guys to go to shows that are here on campus and discuss them. I'm going to have to get a little bit more creative, which is why it's so important for you guys to have figured out which show you're going to go to and what movie you're going to watch. I'm going to have you go to one show and you can watch a movie, but it must have been a play. And I prefer that it be a staged version. Like on Disney, you can watch Newsies, and it's not the Newsies from back in the 90s when I was a kid. It's the actual Newsies musical that's put on stage, and they filmed it with Jeremy Jordan, who playing the lead, who's actually from Corpus Christi, funny enough. Just another example. But so those are the two projects. I've discussed them before, and but let me know if you have questions about that. We do need to get those done. Let's see. So these are some of the shows they've done here. Now we go into directing. Now, the writer of this text was actually a professor here, and so he goes in some really interesting stuff here on the Crucible. I really encourage you to read this. He talks in detail about why he chose the Crucible. He had a friend who accidentally shot and killed her husband, somebody he knew personally, also an acquaintance who was accused of a crime involving children, and he was very passionate about the Crucible because you already assume she's guilty. They already, the people who are judging her already assume guilt, and in these cases that he experienced personally, that was also assumed. And so he felt very passionate about directing the play because he'd seen and identified and wanted to get a message across about assumption of guilt. So then he goes into research that he did, going into the dress of the time period, about the witch trials, about Salem, Massachusetts, so that when it came time for auditions and so forth, he was able to speak intelligently and help his actors get where they needed to be, which he goes in and talks to. Talks about we want to cover the 5 whys with our actors: the who, what, where, when, why. Also, as a production team, we have to answer those first so that we can give it to the actors. Now, he gives an example here from Crimes of the Heart, one of the characters, Lenny McGrath. Very quickly, short for Lenora, whose 30th birthday it is the oldest of the 3 sisters. She's extremely naive about the ways of life, spends most of her time worrying about everybody else. She has a round figure face and carries a motherly sort of fashion. Now, that's very short, but it does help the actor get an idea of what they're portraying. Now, depending on what you have at auditions, this could have been anything. They could this person could be of any race. Doesn't even necessarily have to be physically what is said here. That's just what the script says. You can deviate from that description, which is great. I really enjoyed this little story here. He talks about Plaza Suite. I've actually directed this last year, not the one he was in, different production. But it talks about intimacy. You need your actors to be able to connect with each other. Now, he played a role alongside his wife. This is a really funny story. You should definitely read it. But that intimacy is obviously natural when you've already really been intimate with somebody. It's a little bit more complicated when you have 2 actors who don't know each other. And I've had to work opposite other people where you have to be very honest so that you can develop trust. Otherwise, there's always this question of what's reality, what's pretend, what is work. Making sure that you understand that so you can trust each other and build that intimacy so that the audience can believe it, not sit there awkwardly watching this strangeness happen on stage. So, but I loved Phil's story on that. I had a definite chuckle. Okay, so design. This is great. This is where he gets into lots of pictures. So designing the set. Love this picture over here. He has about like a cave, and then you see below kind of a rendering he gave on how he was going to create a cave on the set. Um, and he goes into some great pictures here on how to do this. Okay, talking about the royal gambit. This is about Henry VIII, which you probably know about his 6 wives. And they all keep dying either by his hand or fate. But in this one, Henry VIII also brought down, created the Church of England, broke away from the Catholic Church, created his own church. And so when they were making this set, that's why it looks like a church disheveled, because it was symbolic of what Henry VIII was doing in the play, which was dissolving their relationship with the Catholic Church and creating the Church of England. So that goes back to that metaphor we talked about when you're creating your set, making it reflect what's happening inside. Now, when you get to Greek shows, especially comedies, sex plays a big part. So when you look at this picture, you're going to see some female anatomy. That was the concept because it reflects what's happening within. And now this was interesting, kind of gets into, you have a street scene, and we have scenic design classes here. One of the tasks set out was to create a street scene. And the first one you see an engraving kind of a style, the next one's an impressionism, and the next one's more of a postmodern. All street scenes, but different concepts. And you can take that show and maybe put it in different settings so that it would have a different feel. But you're already led as an audience member to understand the feel the minute that you see the set, creating that atmosphere. Very, very powerful. So here's some questions here. Don't forget to do those. Okay, costume design. Really good examples. This one is from Twelfth Night. Don't know if you're as familiar with that, but what they do over these next few pages is take one character and kind of go through each act. Or this one's actually individual characters. The next one's kind of move through. But you would create a concept for these characters, which you want it to look like. These are some pretty basic sketches, but you can see right here, they've got a swatch of material. That's extremely helpful because, again, lights can play tricks on fabrics. It's really good to have an idea of what fabrics you're actually going to use, not just blue. There's 10 million kinds of blue out there, not to mention thousands of kinds of fabrics. So being more specific can definitely help. Okay, here you see from A Doll's House. You probably had to read that at some point, maybe in junior high and high school, unless they banned it. But this moves one character, Nora, who is the lead, through the acts and what she is wearing. And they represent, how she is feeling. She moves from being, this perfect little wife to, oh my gosh, I'm being threatened with my scandal. She signed her husband's name to get a loan. And so she feels scandalized. She's been threatened. I'm going to reveal your scandal by a guy who's going to lose his job at her husband's bank. So she's getting a little bit more docile. And then she's going a little bit crazy here in the next act. And then she resolves, because her husband's just a horrible character, to leave him and be like, you know what? I'm gone. You didn't even care enough to support me or to ask why I did this or anything. You just went right straight to threats. And so then you get this independence. I'm leaving. And again, lots of other that I'm oversimplifying. Please read. It's really, really good. Again, there's her husband and how his costumes develop throughout the acts. All the other characters. It's really fascinating. And some extra characters. You don't actually have to have children in that play, but if you do, they got to have costumes. So things you have to decide as a team. Okay. A Delicate Balance. This is an interesting show. You've got this family at home with the aunt/sister. This other couple shows up. The husband is a friend of the father and stays for the weekend. And it's very metaphysical. It's all about the dialogue between the characters. And it gets awkward in the second act because the guests, the wife of that couple, just has no filter, tells everything that she thinks, and she brings up all the awkwardness. And so they end up staying for the weekend, and by Sunday morning, everybody's like, what just happened? And so you kind of see them all go from kind of relaxed to more formal to bathrobes. And you see that happen with kind of all the characters. So more relaxed, more formal, and then into the bathrobe or pajamas, if you will, on Sunday morning going, what in the world? So that gives you more detail in there. Here's your other assignment. Okay, lighting design. Okay, I love this one. If you've never seen a show with a rotating platform, it's absolutely fabulous. Hamilton usually uses one. But it certainly wasn't new. That wasn't a concept they created. It's been going on for a long time to have a rotating set. Here's some design ideas from the Three Penny Opera, two different ways of doing it, which of course opens with a guy who's been convicted and is in jail. But you can see there's two designs on how to do it, but they're both kind of the same feeling of bleakness, and darkness. I liked this idea. He gave two different ones. These are two different offerings on how to do a lighting concept for the little foxes. Two different renderings. This one was chosen, even though this one's very good drawing. If you look up here, you can see where they put ideas into where light sources would come from. Right here on the mantle, back here behind the character on the table, there's another lamp. There's just some interesting light sources. But these were done 10 years before they actually did the production. And by the time they actually got to production, it had changed and evolved and more ideas had come in. And this is really interesting because if you're sitting in the audience, this is more to the audience's right. The stage is left. And then the one below it, you've got more of the audience that's sitting on the left side, that because it's the same set. You're looking at the same set. You're just looking at two different angles. Here are some other examples. Take a look at these. Really beautiful. Oh, I want to stop real quickly here because this is supposed to be Central Park location, and I'm not Rappaport. Look at this is just kind of more of a general wash. But then the minute that you change the lights, look how eerie that looks, and it changes. So that gets into your light design and how that can change everything too. So very, very interesting. Lots more wonderful examples he's put up here. It's hard to believe most of these are in the same space. I mean, you completely change the look of the stage with your design. It's incredible. So more questions there. Make sure you get this is a long chapter, you guys. Lots to turn in here. This is a big one. All right, sound design. So if you've ever been to a show, they usually have a playlist beforehand. So if you've got something that took place in the 50s, you're going to hear more 50s music. It just makes sense, right? And here he's kind of showing you for the Heidi Chronicles, that show moves from the 60s to the 80s. Here's a list of the songs that they picked. You can kind of take a better look in detail into that, but it makes sense. It works with it. And then scrolling down here to their soundboard. This is just a picture of the soundboard that we have put in one of our theaters here. You can see how things have to patch in. Remember, you're not just doing sound effects. You're also doing, the songs before the show. You're doing the microphones that the actors are using. There's so much that's going in there, and so much of it's wireless. And it takes a true artist to be able to do it and do it well. And it makes all the difference in the experience and delivery of the show. I know I can get pretty distracted when the sound's not on point. Okay, well, that's it for chapter 10, and we'll move on to chapter 11 here in a little bit. Hope you're doing well. Don't forget all of those little assignments. All those little things are worth many points here in this chapter.